Okay, here we are again. We're going to try to pick up where we left off last week. We were going to we're going to do another debriefing on fulvic acid, but we kind of got lost in conversation and stories. So we'll just try to continue where we left off as we kind of stated last week. But on one side, no introduction needed, but I'll do it anyway. Harley Smith, the hydroweight champion of the world. I'm the organic mechanic with Kelp4less.com. And let's just start this off. I know you've been doing a lot more research on fulvic and humic acids, and it's a, it's a broad, uh, there's a lot of topics to discuss in these two organic elements. And we touch on them a lot in the past. We've done other episodes totally on it, but yeah, it's just time to revisit and go over and talk about what we've learned. One thing I know are both of these organic acids, they're produced naturally in nature. A lot of it has to do with decomposition and digestion of organic matter and fermentation of organic matter. And it can also be extracted from some rock minerals as well. So it can be plant derived or rock mineral derived or fermentation derived, actually. So, and we can touch on all of those, but I know Harley is the scientist and he can explain it a lot better than I can. So what have you found out or studied recently, Harley, on the organic acids?
Well, I've been looking at the humic and fulvic acid for a while. Uh, Humic acid is really a combination of humic and fulvic acid. The humic fraction are the larger molecules, more complex, larger, and the fulvic acid are the smaller, more biologically active molecules. So it's really a combination. And the Voights had a hard time as far as with labeling to be able to put fulvic acid on the label. Usually they say low molecular weight humic acid. And the reason is because I don't think they found a way or they could agree on exactly what the definition is. Because it's so complex, there's so many different parts and fractions in that continuum between the humic acid, stronger toward the humus, and the fulvic acid toward the lightest molecules. There's a lot of stuff in between. So if you can't define it, then you can't measure it properly.
We've run into that
So this,
problem a lot on
yeah,
labels and guarantees and all that stuff. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah. But we do know there is just all kinds of scientific data proving the effectiveness of humic and fulvic acids. To me, the humic acid, which is that when it includes the bigger molecules that makes the really dark soils, the darker part of the human and the humic acid fraction, to me that makes a
Mhm.
really great bridge in the soil between the clay particles and the minerals. So it makes the bridge. So there's positive and negative charges on that humic acid that's holding on to different ions. Um, so if you're making a bridge between the clay and it, then it's easier for the to release those mineral ions for the plant. If there's a strong clay particles and there's a lot of cation exchange, sometimes it can hold on to the nutrients too tightly, and then that makes it harder for the root to displace them and take them up.
Mhm.
So having that humic acid in there really improves the efficiency of the uptake of a lot of nutrients that can get locked up in the soil. Not locked up by chemical reactions, but locked up just by the electrical charges that are being held too tightly.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In one of our prior episodes, you talked about the claw. Do you recall
Oh yeah,
that? That's a pretty good refresher too. That I think for me, looking at it like that, it really helped me understand the properties. And so maybe you wouldn't mind, just going over that again with us because that was very informative.
okay. Well, humic acid and fulvic acid, might as well finish the story though. fulvic acid, more biologically active, smaller molecules. Um, that is soluble either in alkaline or acid conditions, and it does a little more complexation. Kind of will not only chelate, but kind of complex and surround and protect the chelates and other chelates that are there. Now, the word chela for in chelate, chela means claw. Okay, so a chelate is an organic molecule that attaches to a mineral ion like a claw. It holds it tightly enough so that it doesn't react with other molecules and get truly locked out chemically. Holds it tightly enough, but loosely enough so it can be available to the plant on demand. Now, some of these smaller chelates, uh, really they're making the mineral available, and then there's enzymes on the cell wall that reductase, let's say for iron, for example. There's a reductase that will change the insoluble iron that may still be attached like a claw, but that enzyme that's that touches the plant makes an enzymes that reduce that ferric nitrogen or iron, which is insoluble, into ferrous nitrogen, which is soluble, and then the plant will take it in. There's another way it is. Plants can take in some of these organic molecules too. Usually they're the smaller ones though, like the amino acids. They can take it in, but then the plant will break them down inside the cell membrane, the chelate itself, release the mineral that it needs, like the iron, and then just break down and decompose the chelate. Um, and then another way it can happen is it can take it in, but instead of decomposing the chelate on the inside of the cell, it can take off the iron or whatever other element and then exude the chelate back out into the root zone so that it can continue to do its work. So really, there's a lot going on there scientifically, but the end result, I mean, to the farmer, the grower, is that mineral that's sometimes very hard to take up becomes more available to the plant. So the chela holds it and then releases it, chelates.
Yeah. And then, so for example, with the presence of fulvic acid and humic acid, whether it be in a soilless setting or a soil setting, what are the proper parameters that you're looking for when using those elements, let's say in a soilless system, like the humic and fulvic acids? Like, what's a good time to use one or the other, or both, or kind of explain those concepts with us that you've learned.
Okay. Well, the the simple answer is when I'm doing hydroponics or if I'm doing a foliar spray, I like to lean more toward the fulvic acids
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because they're more biologically active.
Mm-hmm.
In soil, in organic soil, I've leaned toward the humic acid because again, they're larger molecules and they will hold on to not only to the minerals, but they can hold on to and protect enzymes. Enzymes that are made by microbes and by plants, they don't last so very long. It could be hours or just a few days in the soil. They just get digested and broken down and then become inactive. But some of the humic substances and humates can hold on and protect those enzymes, even though they're not active at the time, but they can protect them for years. So there's more going on there than meets the eye. We're protecting the enzymes until they're needed, the same way we're protecting the mineral ions until they're needed. And I'll say one other thing here too, is that one thing that humic and fulvic acids, the combination, have an effect on is literally they stimulate what's called the H plus ATPase enzyme. That is an enzyme in the cell membrane. Okay, it's a proton pump. I think I've mentioned this before. So it's in the membrane of the cell, but the humic and fulvic acids are stimulating that enzyme to pump protons. So the inside of the cell membrane becomes more negatively charged. The outside of the cell membrane becomes more positively charged. The voltage potential across the membrane is increased, like a battery. The voltage potential increases, the plant literally uses that potential energy to help transport some difficult minerals such as iron, but a whole lot of other ones, not just iron, a lot of other minerals. So even nitrate nitrogen will be transported more efficiently if we have that more energy, potential energy for the plant to use to cross that membrane. And think of this too, Brandon. If that proton pump is going on, the outside becomes more positively charged with hydrogen ions. That means the outside of the cell membrane is more acidic. And that can actually make things like iron, copper, manganese, and zinc more soluble, more available. So
Oh, Harley,
there's a,
yeah,
there's a lot
that's
going
deep.
on.
That is a lot going on. That's deep right there. I'm glad you can explain it like that. 'Cause, whew, that's
Yeah,
that's some technical stuff.
yeah. And okay, now look at this from the whole plant view. The plant's able to take up more iron. By the way, that orange color in fulvic acid, that's iron, is what you're seeing, right? But anyway, the plant takes up more iron. Iron is a catalyst for chlorophyll production. So the
Mhm.
plant's going to make more chlorophyll. It's going to harvest more of the light energy and make more sugars. Brooks is going to go up, and the excess sugars are going to be leaked from the roots to feed the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria that help make the enzymes to make the nutrients more available. So you see so that's another level. You're not just, oh well, we can take a better iron uptake. Iron that gets oxidized so easily in the soil to the Fe3 positives ion, which is
Mhm.
insoluble. But it's reduced, but there's reducing agents that are made by plants and by microorganisms to make it more available. So you feed the microorganisms, they're gonna make the reductants to make the those transition metals more available.
Yeah. Nature has a way of sorting all this stuff out. Soil has a way of sorting all this stuff out because of those processes you just explained. It's phenomenal what goes on that we can't see, we can't visual. I mean, it just happens. And what a well-oiled machine.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. The other thing with the iron and the manganese as part of the electron transport chain for photosynthesis. So it's not just a catalyst to make chloroplasts, the green pigment to harvest the sun, but it also channels the energy to improve the efficiency of photosynthesis. And there are some micro plant growth promoting rhizobacteria that are specifically chosen to help enhance the photosynthetic process itself. And those are many of the microorganisms that I believe that you're using in your living water.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I think the main key in that is going to be the availability of manganese. That's the front end of the electron transport chain that breaks down the water into hydroxyl ions and hydrogen ions to start the release of those electrons. And then the iron is kind of at the end of the copper and iron are kind of toward the end of that cycle for photosynthesis and cellular metabolism. So the full flow of energy is contingent in many on photosynthesis, which is enhanced by the microorganisms.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now let's kind of bridge this conversation into um, some sources of fulvic acid, or what we recommend to a lot of our customers, or what a lot of growers use, and so on and so forth. So there's a couple different options. many growers like the liquid fulvic, and I've actually seen how this is made. It's from a humic acid facility, and they centrifuge it, they spin it, and it'll separate the fulvic from the humic, and then they pull the fulvic off. So it's a very, very clean, very pure form of fulvic, but you pay for it. I mean, it is expensive. So a lot of times, you know, in soilless or hydroponic, that's a go-to just because of its there's not a lot of other elements in it. You know, it goes through a real refined practice. Another process is our soluble fulvic acid powder that is plant derived, and it's kind of the same thing. It's a organic matter that has been digested, and again they separate it off and then they dry it to make a soluble powder. So it's very convenient to use. There are some other minerals attached to that, and some other or you know, organic molecules and all that. But it's a very, very good, very strong source of fulvic to use. Another one I like is our liquid gold product, and that's a fermented plant extract. It's very high in fulvic acid naturally, and amino acids, and so on and so forth. And then here's the one. Here's the one I love. Some larger farms or big farms that actually do. I'm sure it's common in your area. They make silage to feed to their cows. They
Mm-hmm.
ferment the feed and make silage to mix in with the food rations for the animals and so on and so forth. And those that do that in a pit, a lot of times at the bottom of the pit, there is this very, very highly concentrated liquid that is just, you know, that's where it's ended up. And a lot of farmers suck that out with hoses and then mix that in with a lot of other fertilizers they apply, or um, you know, spray that over their compost before they apply it. But that silage pit, the liquid silage, is very high in fulvic acid too. So that's just kind
Mm.
of some things I've experimented with. Um, so just as a grower, those are some options you can use to, you know, work fulvic acid into your system, your growing program, or your feedings. What are some that you like to use of
Um,
fulvic sources?
well, um, the main one that I've always used, it's been my go-to for I don't know how many 30 years or whatever decades, was the one that was derived from ancient from prehistoric compost piles. That was from Leonardite. It's kind of
Hmm.
an upper layer of coal. You know, it's not really coal. It's just sort of
Hmm.
a precursor. But it's remember the oil and the coil were made from or not from microorganisms, from living plant material. But
Hmm.
all the nitrogen's gone. All that's left is those carbon skeletons. But what they do is they use extraction with an alkaline like potassium hydroxide. It does add some potassium to the Leonardite, and they were able to withdraw the humic and fulvic acids because they're both soluble in
Hmm.
alkaline solution. And then if they want the fulvic acid, what they do is they acidify it, lower the pH, and the humic fraction will precipitate out the larger molecules. What's left is the fulvic acid. And
Hmm.
that was the one that over the years, the one I used the most. But here's something though I found out. I tried to bottle, not just bottle it, but I wanted to use it for some pH buffering
Hmm.
concepts
Oh yeah.
with
Hmm.
fulvic acid, which we could get into also. But um, the problem is it's so biologically active, I couldn't store it. I mean, when it was in the liquid form, because it would get contaminated within a week or two. There would be bacteria colonies, snotty stuff floating in the water. Now, I don't think that's hurting anything. I think that's why it's so good, is because it's so biologically active. But
Hmm.
it was hard for the shelf life of that. That's the benefit of the powder. The powders that you have that are soluble, if there's no water, you don't have to worry about the colonies growing until you activate it with water. And then it'll
Yeah.
do its job. They'll do its job as a foliar to help transport 60 beneficial trace elements. Yeah,
Hmm.
that have a
Yeah.
positive effect on the plant as well as the iron. So there's pros and cons, but I've used the liquids in the past, um, but as I get older, I really like the idea of having soluble powders and mix them up fresh, get
Hmm.
them really active, and using them right away.
Yeah. Yeah. The convenience of use and the availability to dose it on demand and have it stored for the next time as well. And we have a really good soluble fulvic here at Kelp4less that I know you're aware of. And, yeah, very convenient. And I'm right there. I'm right there with you. It's uh, sometimes it's hard to store or maintain some of the elements and things that you like to use in a garden or a farm. So we have to look at that side of it. Um, we need to have some convenience, to be able to dose it properly. And the powders kind of solve all those problems, check all those boxes. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, it's good information again. Yeah, it's funny how we can keep coming back and touching on all these topics again, and it just brings up more conversation.
Yeah, we could continue this whole thing just on humic and fulvic acid next week because we just barely scratched the surface. It's also that combination of those bigger and smaller molecules help to buffer pH in the soil. How it raises the pH of the acid soil, it lowers the pH of alkaline soil because they had buffering capacity. I was going to
Hmm.
literally make a pH buffer solution for a hydroponics company when I wanted to use fulvic acid. But again, when I tried in my experiments in the lab, I'd mix it up. And I'd want to add, some citric acid to balance off the humic, the fulvic acids, see if I could lock in the pH a little better. Problem was no shelf life. And I
Hmm.
sure as heck didn't want to add any um, antibiotics or preservatives.
Preservatives. Yeah.
So I just said, hey, I'm sorry. Well, you're going to have to do it. Maybe you could do it as a powder that in the cap that you could just release into the water and shake it up. I don't know for shelf life, but by the time you get into packaging and all the engineering designs, in the end, they just said, well, let's shelve this one. They'll go back to that later, maybe. So that was one product I never made, but I really wanted to use fulvic acid as part of a pH buffer solution.
Absolutely.
I guess that's it. We're out of time for today already. That was fast. I wanted to ask you some more questions about the fermentation to
Oh,
produce it. I know that fulvic acid is is the earliest byproduct of the fermentation process. That's that brown liquid in the jungle, that feeds the orchids and stuff. That's
oh
more
yeah.
fulvic acid. The humic acid takes more time, and
Hmm.
then the human, the stuff that's left over, that takes the longest, and then eventually, I don't even know what it is. It's just carbon skeletons in
Yeah.
the future. So I
Yeah.
really want to hear more from you. Maybe you can tell
We'll
me more
we'll
about
touch
that
on that.
process next time, or unless
Oh
you just
yeah.
want to
It's
mention it now.
very interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah, let's bring that up. I'll go through that process and why they do it and how they do it, and basically they're, I guess, pre-digesting the feed for the animals through this fermentation process, so it's more available to them. But it's an interesting process. We'll go through that. I'll see if I can't round up some pictures.
Yeah, I've been studying. We'll close up here. I've been studying this week. I've been really diving into um, redox, reduction, oxidation
Hmm.
reactions in the soil.
Hmm.
And that was
Yeah.
when I had a hard time. I don't know for how long. I had a hard time picturing or wrapping my head around that. And now all of a sudden it's making sense because I'm seeing it as the flow of energy. It's the flow of electrons. And when I'm seeing that, that really is how life works. is with redox reactions with and enzymes to lower the activation energy for those chemical
Yeah.
reactions. But that's what I've been studying this week. It's been really fun.
Yeah,
And
that's a
also
little bit of
learning,
buzzword. That's a little bit of buzzword right now
learning,
too in the ag community.
yeah, and also learning a little difference between the aerobic and anaerobic, because really it's not just aerobic, anaerobic, opposite sides of the spectrum. There's a lot of degrees in between, and there's some microbes that are right in the middle that are facultative aerobes or facultative anaerobes, sort of in the middle, and they are some of the ones that have the best effect on the immune system of the plant and protection. So I'm learning a lot this week, just looking at getting to understand oxidation and reduction. And now that I understand it better, I'm able to go back and look at my literature and understand how it works better. So that's what I've been doing.
All right. Can't wait to hear. Keep it
Okay,
coming.
well, we'll catch up with you next week. Have
Okay.
a good one.
You too. Good talking with
Okay,
you. See ya.
bye bye.